discussion is extremely important. I feel for us as a society and as a larger global world. Right now, we're in the midst of a reality, a wake-up call that the country has woken up to, of the manifestation of injustice in various forms, whether it be mass incarceration, police brutality, unjust laws that set people back. And a lot of the times these are headlines for people. And we read these headlines and we move on. And then sometimes we feel we can assist in the situation, and sometimes we feel it's not our place or our role. But what we can do is see the person that faces this injustice and actually get to know the humanity behind the injustice and see how injustice manifests in people's lives. We can do that. We can have those conversations beyond headlines. And I wanted to have this conversation with Stephen Hawthorne, who is now known as Mustapha, who was wrongly convicted at the age of 16 for life sentence without parole and served 37 years. And thank you so much for joining me, Mustapha.
Thank you for having me.
So let's have this question first. Your incredible story of being wrongly convicted at 16. And I want to know, when you were 16, who were you and who did you think the world saw you as?
At 16, basically, I was a misguided, lost youth that was looked at as a suspect.
As a suspect?
Absolutely.
How? What gave you that message at 16? And was it 16 or did it start young?
That message has been instilled from my personal experience. I can remember on many occasions where my stepfather was arrested and taken from the home in front of police while my mother had been arrested. And as a child, when you see that and you see these so-called authority figures, meaning law enforcement, come and it instills in grains of fear, even at childhood, before I ever had any serious encounters with police myself. But even coming up as a young person, to be stopped by the police, to be searched, to be basically humiliated, and people looking at you and assuming you must have done something, you know, it creates a level of mistrust, insecurity, fear. You know, the police have the power. They have the power to kill, to take you away, to take your family away, to just turn your world upside down.
It's really the degradation of humanity, right? It's taking your dignity and picking it apart and making sure that you don't use it to empower yourself, but disempower yourself.
When I went to school, a part that we didn't touch on, when I went to prison, I had a 4th grade math level and a 5th grade reading level, even though I was going into my 3rd year of high school. They had a thing called social pass.
Okay.
I knew I could read and write and so forth and count, but they would just pass you on. There was no expectation. There was no, I was trying to find the word. There was no real level of expectation of us in that community where we went to school at.
Are you saying that no one believed in you to do better than 4th
I can think
grade?
about my neighborhood. If you think about most people, I'm quite sure maybe most of the people that's behind the scenes of producing this show, or if you coming up, I think if you look around at the people that you went to school with, many of them are probably relatively live middle-class lives. Maybe even some are even successful. When I go to my neighborhood, and we have our neighborhood reunions and stuff like that from high school, who made it? who became successful, you know, who went on to politics or have an engineering degree or work at, you know, our levels of success was at such a mediocre level that if your people worked for CTA, you was well. You really made it somewhere. That you had and a CTA job is not necessarily a great, it's work. And there's no such thing as undignified work. But when we think about who made it, nobody made it.
So
Most of us ended up dead on drugs or in the penitentiary that I went to school with.
now you're working with kids and you're teaching them how to navigate the space that you were in, and also how to deal with law enforcement. But more importantly, what I want to know as we end this is, what do you teach them, these young kids? And it may be lessons that you practice yourself. How do they, based on the messages they're receiving also by the people that are supposed to protect them, how do they, and how are they supposed to be individuals that will move society forward?
I try to teach them how to be me. That's a lost art. It's a lost science. We learn more from what we see than what anybody will ever tell us or walk us through. And and unfortunately, I was raised in prison by the people that would be looked at as notorious gang leaders and criminals and stuff like that. These had became my role models and my examples. And these men who could be as vicious as night and day, but they conducted and carried themselves in such a way that it influenced me. That what we needed was me. That what young people are looking for is manhood. They need to see a physical, living, walking, talking example. That's what most of us didn't have. When our generation went into those prisons, that's what these young people were left without. So it was the blind leading the blind. And in prison, you have, like I said, you have to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to learn because you're on your own now. Yeah. You have to be responsible. You have to be, and this is a part of survival in that kind of world. And it's just a microcosm of a bigger macrocosm. And so for our work, you know, and I just try to set an example. I just try to walk in the circle, and I try to be as unfiltered and as raw as possible. That this world don't care about you. This world doesn't owe you anything. It's about what you are willing to do, how hard you are willing to work to get what you want out of life.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful, Mustapha. And I think you can't just take things that are given to you, bits and pieces and craps that people think this is what you deserve. You have to want for yourself. And because the world is not set up. The world is not set up to be there for you.
You have to have a vision of what you want, and you have to stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't let, because we will always have naysayers. You can't, it's just something that's sadly ingrained. I don't know if it's institutional racism. I hypothetical, what I would say is this. If you put a black man, a white man, and another black man in the room, and this young black man asks, how do you solve this equation? If I solve this equation, they'll doubt it, and I can be absolutely right. This white man can solve this equation and be absolutely wrong, but subconsciously, they'll think he's right. That second opinion will override my first opinion. And that is the institutionalized racism that we suffer from. You're not supposed to know because you come from where I come from.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is a manifestation of injustice too. There's so many various levels of injustice that you've shared. And I think what is so significant, and that you have been able to recognize them, and you've been able to teach them to other people. And I want to thank you for joining me today And I want to thank you specifically for having a vision for your life and for being able to execute that vision and for being a role model to so many people. And then again, reminding everybody that you have to be able to speak the truth to change. Because many times people will put you in a box and say, you're anti-law enforcement, you're pro-law enforcement. This is about solving problems. This is about recognizing the manifestations of injustice. So I am so honored that you put a face and a personality and your heart to that. And I'm honored. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity.
And with that, I bid you peace today.